and welcome to the Outer Hour. I'm Tom London with you for the next 60 minutes. We're going to be diving deep into the State of the Nation speech tomorrow. Well, we're doing it tonight. It's coming up tomorrow. Julius Kleinhans, executive of the Social Innovation Division at Outer, will join us, as well as Rachel Fisher, who's down. Well, let's put Julius on screen because he's waving. There we go. Wave again, Julius. There we go. Julius Kleinhans will join us in just a little bit. He'll be joined by Rachel Fisher, who is in Cape Town at the moment. She'll be joining us from Defend Our Democracies, a country in crisis, the real state of the nation, being hosted at St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town. She'll go live from the cathedral and perhaps bring someone from Defend Our Democracy onto the show with her. So that will be in a few minutes from now. But and then who else have we got? We got Brendan Slade. It's been a while since we've chatted to Brendan Slade. And Brendan normally brings us up to date with what's happening with our toll roads, the concessionaires. Remember, Outer's been on this case for a while. We've got some updates for you, and Brendan will be bringing those to you in a minute or two. Shall we go to the comments and see who our chief whip is tonight? Who was first on board on the Outer Hour? I think it's an old favorite tonight. The chief whip is Claire Feldman. Claire Feldman was first on tonight, right? Melissa Whitehorn says, hello from Pretoria. Let's say hello to you. And don't forget to like and share the program. Madeline Gutsch is on board. More will join us via Facebook and YouTube. Samantha van Nispen, head of marketing and comms at Outer, is taking care of you in the YouTube feed. And Masego Mtswaneng is dealing with you as the moderator in the Facebook feed. I hope I got that right. And we'll see more and more people join us as we go through the hour. Well, thank you for joining us. It's good to see you on this Wednesday night. Hope that you're feeling well wherever you are. And if you're watching post live, thanks for pressing play on the program. Let's say hello and catch up, shall we, with Brendan Slade, Legal Project Manager at Outer, and talk about the N3TC ruling and concessionaire updates, and also have a bit of a discussion about transparency and how government drags its feet with court cases. Hello, Brendan. How are you?
Mr. London, good to be on tonight.
It's good to have you with us. It's been an interesting week, an interesting year. I mean, it feels like we've had a year inside 2 months, or a month and a bit. But hey, everything keeps going on. And then bang, SONA's back. And weren't we just discussing it the other day, last year? And a big one, I feel, this tomorrow. The president's going to stand up, and all sorts of predictions being made about cabinet reshuffles, etc., etc. But we're talking about that later on in the program. But let's get an update on the N3TC ruling. And before we give an update on the ruling, just for anyone who's new to the program or has forgotten, what's the problem? What's the beef that Outer has with these toll road concessionaires?
Okay, well, first off, just to recap on what the concessionaires are, they are 3 major private companies in South Africa operating the major toll routes on behalf of SANRAL.
Yeah.
So these concessionaire contracts lapse after 30 years. They were entered into during the late 90s. So as we near the 2030s, these contracts will come to an end. So it's basically a build, operate, transfer agreement entered into between SANRAL and these different private entities. They are track in N3TC, which we will be discussing shortly, as well as Bakwena. A lot of people going up north through Pretoria will see the Bakwena signs with the little crocodile. So that is a concessionaire. So just one thing, we do appreciate the fact that there is space in a country like South Africa for the notion of concessionaires. This type of business model is used across Europe, and it's particularly used in the United States as far as the railway is concerned. So that may perhaps be something which Transnet can look at with the whole infrastructure collapsing on the rails. But just going back to the pertinent point of your question, Tom.
Yeah, what's the problem?
Why is Outer pursuing this? Well, we are very used to, if we drive down to Durban, we go through the toll gates, and it would cost us a penny. We need to scramble for the 5 rands, 20 rands. So that money's going somewhere. Annually, these toll tariffs increase, and the roads look wonderful, by the way. But we need to ask ourselves how much of this money is going to SANRAL and how much of this money is actually being pocketed by the private entities.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. If everything is above board, that is fine, but be open about it.
Brendan, you got a court order in your favor in the N3TC case. What's that all about?
So the N3TC case is one of the 3 cases pending currently before the Pretoria High Court. So it is an application in terms of the Promotion of Access to Information Act, wherein we requested records relating to the financials as far as N3TC and SANRAL is concerned. You know, the costs and the contracting principles behind that. So in the litigation, you need to tick certain boxes in order to advance the litigation to a next step. So what happened here is we launched as far back as 2021. And SANRAL, in order for us to advance this matter, had to file their heads of argument. In terms of the court rules, the heads of argument entail the complete argument on the papers that would be presented by counsel before the court. So we cannot proceed if that tick box exercise, it's very rudimentary. I mean, you don't have to be a silk counsel to draft heads of argument. As soon as that is done, we can advance. SANRAL obviously didn't respond. We asked them to file the heads of argument middle of last year. They refused. So we unfortunately had to revert to what they call an application to compel in terms of the court.
How do you refuse to write a heads of argument?
It's simple. Literally, just don't do it.
Wow. Okay. And I mean, it sounds like feet dragging to me. I mean, you launched this case when, Brendan, in 2021?
In 2021,
it's now
that's correct.
2023. It's taking some time. Is there feet dragging going on?
Yes. No, obviously, there's a lot of feet dragging. But luckily, we got the matter placed for the 31st of January. This matter was heard. We got the court order in our favor. And believe it or not, SANRAL delivered in terms of the court order on Monday this week.
So they've drafted their heads of argument.
And they've drafted and they served their heads of argument together with the practice note, which they ought to file in terms of the rules.
All right. So I'm guessing the case now goes ahead. How confident are you that this will move along speedily in South African law terms?
Well, obviously, that's in the judiciary's hand. We know that the court rolls are clogged with a lot of matters, in motion court and action proceedings also being heard. But from our side, we've done everything that we can do in terms of litigation. Now it is a question of applying for a new court date for the main matter to be heard. So hopefully, before the end of this year, we will have a judgment clarifying that OUTA is entitled to the information that it sought in the application.
What effects do these delays have?
Well, it's really bad for the public's morale. First off, people would see that government just delays one day after another, and we would grow, or the public would grow despondent. So if government can get away with something like this, why can the normal guy on the street not do the same? The other thing is, with these delays, every single consultation, every single filing of court papers, court notice, court appearances costs money. Lawyers cost money, advocates cost money, and if you litigate against the state, well, guess what? Somebody has to fit the bill, and that somebody is the taxpayer. So every cost order that is granted against a government litigant is effectively funded by the South African public. So just a common example, I mean, the public protector, with all her defeats in court, somebody had to fit the bill, and that's the taxpayer.
Too true. You've got 3 court cases pending against SANRAL relating to the concessionaires. What do you see, or what do you wish for? If you had a wish list, those 3 cases, what would you like the outcomes to be?
Well, first off, we want all litigants, that being the concessionaire and Sunroll, to abide by the court rules, not cause any further undue delays. And ultimately, we would obviously like court orders granted in our favor to set legal precedent stating that information relating to concession agreements should be publicly available.
Yeah.
Civil society and the public should not revert to court for this kind of information.
Yeah, to ask a simple question. The question is, where does the money go? Just show the South African public how the money is split up and where it goes. Why so secretive?
Exactly. If everything is above board, why all these delays? Why do we need to go to court in the first place? That is our most major frustration as civil society.
Well, you're on it, and you've never let the ball go. You keep at it, and Outer keeps at it. I mean, I was looking at a comment from Andrew Jennings saying it's very frustrating, and I guess it could be quite easy to give up. You must have a big bucket of headache pills on the desk to deal with these legal challenges, but Outer never stops. I mean, you don't let this go. I mean, it's not even on the table to let something like this go, is it?
No, definitely. And just to add to that, Tom, we've got so much going on around us in terms of energy. And then we still need to keep our heads up and, fight the good fights on all fronts. So there are a lot of corners in South Africa that we need to tackle. Corruption, maladministration. So we keep going. When this year started, we hit the ground running. We are balls to the wall with a lot of court cases pending at the moment. And kudos to all our legal teams out there helping with this litigation, making it possible. It's a massive team effort, but we cannot litigate without supporters behind us. So thank you so much for everybody out there. These fights that we conduct in the courtrooms and the paper we push every week, this is made possible thanks to your support.
Claire Feldman says, we are yet to see a completed high-profile case. Justice delayed is justice denied. You want to jump on that comment? Justice delayed is justice denied?
First off, South Africa has a very, very good legal framework and one of the best constitutions in the world. Obviously, our problem lies with the implementation, the political will for government to play its part. It works horizontally as well as vertically. So you will get the Dali Mpofus out there, using legal gymnastics to push the matter out as far as possible. But there are also good litigants out there. There are also still good people out there. Not all lawyers are crooks. Not all advocates are just there for the money. But unfortunately, if we look at the state capture cases, which are of a criminal nature, we would like to see a much faster process. And these delays, to some extent, discredit the government in the eyes of the South African public. And that's unfortunate. But what I can say is the legal system is working. And as Stefani usually says when she comes on Outer Hour, is that the wheel turns slow, but it turns. So justice will prevail at the end. It just takes a little bit of time.
Here's what Alex Elshove has to say. Alex says, obviously their lack of cooperation indicates that they have something to hide or be embarrassed about. Do you get that feeling? Or do you always worry about that when people aren't forthcoming with information?
No, there may obviously be an explanation on a case-to-case basis, but the rhetorical question, well, I don't want to say rhetorical question because it shouldn't be rhetoric, but if everything is above board, play open cards. It comes down to a culture of self-interest, a culture of impunity, a culture of getting away with it, and we want to break that. We want government to become transparent so that we don't have to be in this position to ask for cooperation, to ask for information, or having to go to court in the first place.
Thank you, Brendan. Brendan will stick around for the State of the Nation discussion. We're going to have that with Julius Kleinans and hopefully Rachel Fisher will join us out of Cape Town. We're waiting for Rachel to climb on board just before 20 past. We'll look out for her in the Zoom room. We'll go down to Cape Town, to the real state of the nation, a country in crisis. Defend Our Democracy is hosting an event down there. Rachel will go live and perhaps bring a person or two from DOD onto the screen with her. We will cross to Cape Town to Rachel Fisher with a bit of luck and technically holding thumbs. You know, with load shedding, you never know what's possible, but we've got our eyes out waiting for Rachel Fisher. Julius Kleinans is standing by to talk about State of the Nation, and I hope you are too. I want to know, firstly, what do you think of State of the Nation? I don't mean the speech, not the State of the Nation address. I'm talking about the event. You may have watched a number of them over the years. You may be familiar with who wears what. You may open up the Sunday newspapers and see the fantastic outfits and dresses. I'm talking about the spectacle. What do you think of that? Is it appropriate? And I ask you this question because I'm undecided. One, it's an important event in the nation's calendar, and you want people to dress up and take it seriously and look the part. On the other hand, in a country where people go hungry, where healthcare is not where it should be, where safety and security is nowhere where it should be, and we can just keep going on with that list, the people who run the show are the ones that rock up in the expensive outfits and the flashy cars and the perks and the food and the after parties. So my first question to you tonight, before we get to the team, is I'm asking you on the other side of this camera, what do you think of the State of the Nation spectacle? Good or bad? Pop your answers in the comment section down below this video. Let's ask Julius Kleinans what he thinks of it, just generally speaking. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of the address in just a moment. Julius is the Executive of Social Innovation at Outer, and I'm sure he'll have a thought on this. How's it, Julius?
Hey, Tom. I think it's actually pretty disgusting. You know, if you look at how politics have become a career at the expense of the people. You know, we're toying with the idea, for you to get to the top in a political party, what are you willing to sacrifice and how much value do you add? And I suppose that's in monetary value, as we've seen of state capture. And so sadly, it's not about serving the public anymore. And but yeah, what can we expect? You know, we're going to see some red carpets and politicians looking like celebs. We're going to see some dressed poorly. We're going to see some disruption. You know, and when I suppose the air is a bit cleared and some folks have vacated Parliament tomorrow night, we will also see a billionaire taking the stage. Yeah, we'll see a very cool and calm billionaire taking the stage, saying that, listen, we've got serious problems in the country and we need all citizens to work with government. We've got work to do. You know, there's going to be some promises made of social compact and relief on social grants, buying some votes for next year. Hopefully people will vote for the ruling party. We will, you know, we're going to speak about our money. Same old. Sadly, you know, we're going to see about money being made available to fix all these problems, yet it's going to be borrowed from somewhere else. So, sadly, it's the same old.
Just remember, tomorrow when the hundreds of millions and billions get rolled out, it's South African taxpayers' money. Right, shall we see what you've got to say about this? So we'll get to Brendan in just a moment. Lynn Smith says it's a waste of money and time. Claire Feldman says the pomp and ceremony is not appropriate given the true state of the nation and all the crises facing us. Melissa Whitehorn says SONA is a working event, so should be treated as a work meeting, not the spectacle that it is now. Denise Saul Jacob says, evening Outarians, better late than never. Oh, good to have you with us. Thank you, Denise. Madeline Gooch says SONA, all the glamour is a waste of our money. Andre Jennings wants to say hello to Julius. Lot going on here. Agreed, it's not the Oscars, says Bernard Jacobs. I like that comment. Agreed, it's not the Oscars. Claire Feldman says $8 million. Travesty of justice. Alex Helshope says, I think the pomp and ceremony shows how these leaders have lost touch with what's really happening in the country. Freddie Mills says, like a red carpet Oscar parade. Hope nobody gets slapped. We don't do pies in faces in South Africa. The British are good at that. Hey? Just a good old cream pie in someone's face. That's happened 100 times with politicians and celebrities in the UK. We never do anything like that. We just celebrate. Hey? Cyril will admit about all the disasters caused by the ANC, but the ANC will fix it. That's what Wood says. And Hilda Meyer says, SONA, yes, it should be about the state of affairs, but not a fashion show. There we go. I mean, the sentiment is mostly, almost exclusively, in fact, against all this pomp and ceremony. This is a working day. This is a country that needs a lot of work. Put your working clothes on. Put your meeting clothes on. And go to this thing we call the State of a Nation address, which is actually quite serious. Be serious about it. Let's ask Brendan what he thinks. Brendan, are you a fan of all the fashionistas?
It's a shameful and a hypocritical spectacle, Tom. It's a bunch of politicians telling us that everything is hunky-dory when it's not. It's a bunch of leaders, which shouldn't call themselves leaders, that tell us that they have a plan. And when we as South Africans want action, we are just bombarded with more plans, more committees being established, more plans, more crisis meetings, more plans. So it's yeah, I don't want to go.
Don't be blunt.
Into that. Yeah. This is a family show this evening, but I'm sure you get the message.
All right, what do you think we can expect from SONA this year? Brendan.
I think my response should be absolutely nothing. I should just not say anything, because we have learned from past SONAs that it's all these, these golden packages offered for us as South Africans. Nothing comes from it. We are sick and tired. We are gutful of hearing about things that will happen, and it never does. So low expectations. If there's a golden nugget in there somewhere, I suppose we can be happy about that, but that's very doubtful.
Julius Kleinans, do you think there'll be any big announcements tomorrow?
Yeah, look, I think there will be some serious announcements that's made. I think the governing party is certainly desperate. We might even see a cabinet reshuffle that will follow. But I think, the president has very clearly mentioned earlier this year that this will be an election year. So whatever big decisions are made or announced tomorrow will certainly focus on the popularity of trying to win elections next year. So I think when there is a cabinet reshuffle, what we can expect is whoever gives more power to the president in the elections next year. What we want to see, though, is people who can actually take up ministerial roles and make a difference. It could have been so nice, though I think it's too late, to actually see change happening over the next 8 to 9 months that will put the president in a position where people actually want to vote for him.
All right, let's make some predictions, shall we? Who do you think's going to be out in terms of cabinet? Are there ministers whose heads are on the chopping block? Names, please, in the comment section down below the video. Who do you think's out tomorrow night? Who do you think is in? Is it a given that Paul Mashatile will become our deputy president? Will that be announced tomorrow night? I want you to gaze into your crystal ball wherever you find yourself in this country of ours or around the world. Gaze into the crystal ball and tell me who's coming and who's going. Write it in the comment section down below. We'll pop it up on screen. We'll ask Brendan and we'll ask Julius to do the same. And I'm just checking quickly to see if Rachel is on board with us, and she is. So let's cross down to Cape Town while you are working on your cabinet reshuffle down in the comment section below this video. Okay, to St. George's Cathedral we go down in Cape Town, the mother city, and joined by Rachel Fisher. And it looks like a DOD supporter or member with her. She'll do the introducing. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Tom, and hello to our listeners. I hope you can hear me clearly.
We hear you loud and clear. Just describe what's happening down there, Rachel. A country in crisis, the real state of the nation. What's been going on?
Yes, well, Tom, so we are live here at St. George's, as you've rightly said. The proceedings are still ongoing. This is referred to as the pre-SONA or the People's SONA, and this is to discuss the crisis of the nation. We are not talking about promises and ideal scenarios. We are talking about the current crises, if it's in education, infrastructure, corruption, maladministration, the whistleblowers that aren't being safe and secure. So we have more than 100 attendees here, and the program has got more than 20 people. Definitely. So I'm joined here by Ona from Defend Our Democracy, and Ona has been instrumental in organizing this event. Yeah.
And just describe, if you will, Rachel, and you can pop questions along to your guest as well, because there are three of us involved in this discussion. But what's the objective of this event?
So good day everyone. My name is
Hi.
Sona, and I'm the organizer for this event. So today it's just to get ordinary citizens to get their say as to what exactly happens on the ground, what is the real and the actual state of the nation. So as opposed to having just the president delivering his state of the nation, what is it that we exactly see happening? What is it that we see in our work, in our sectors? What is the real state of the nation? So today we just convened people from different sectors, civil society and community organization to just speak on the real state of affairs that they see on the ground, and just to pave the way forward. Okay, this is the state of the nation that we see happening, the real state of the nation. But what is it that we can do going forward together as a collective when we try to reimagine the difference of Africa?
I'm guessing that at the real state of the nation, there aren't flamboyant outfits and motorcades and bodyguards and all the frills. It's the real South Africa.
Yeah, of course. We are even in our T-shirts, nothing flamboyant. Just, normal citizens.
We've had singing. We have learners here from schools that are getting up and getting, into the spirit, saying what is important to them. We've had school learners even speak, underscoring the importance of education, but not just education within the classrooms, but also the obstacles they have towards getting to education, having to wake up early in the mornings and traveling for kilometers in order to reach their schools. And then when they reach their schools, they don't have running water. The classes are overcrowded. They don't feel safe. And then they need to return home. And then home, of course, there's load shedding. There is not sufficient water supply. And when there's load shedding, that also questions, do they have electricity in the first place? So the entire ecosystem is crumbling.
We've been having a chat just before you joined us about a possible cabinet reshuffle. I'm going to ask the two of you just to think about that for a moment. Perhaps you want to make a prediction, but if you don't want to make a prediction, just tell me when we return to you, what do you think should be done at cabinet level in South Africa? Are there changes to be made? We'll come back to you in just a moment. And let me ask Julius Klenos, because we didn't ask him. Julius, so we'll get to your answers in just a moment that are in the comment section below the screen. Julius, do you have any predictions as far as cabinet reshuffles tomorrow are concerned?
I think specifically with the election year around the corner, you must look at what are citizens most worried about and what affects them most. I think we can assume that something might happen in the energy space with Gwedi Mantashe. We can potentially see Pravin Gordhan being moved. I don't think he will be taken out of his role, but I mean, that's public service itself in charge of Eskom and SOEs. And then, Lindiwe Sisulu has been quite in the spotlight lately, and I think she's also been a bit of a in-your-face threat to the president, so that will be a wise move. And we can always look at something, that's very dear to you and I, on the ground, where municipalities are failing. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma has been the oversight body for years, and no ideas how to fix things. They're talking about a district model. They're talking about deploying municipal managers in succeeding or good municipalities to bad municipalities. They've run out of ideas, and now they've said they're going to deploy the senior ANC officials to go and fix municipalities. And these are the people under whose watch all this happened. So I think we can see some moves into that space. Obviously, Deputy President is out, as you've mentioned. Paul Mashatile, I suppose, a very good candidate for the President to take that role. And then the Transport Minister position needs to be filled because of Fikile and Mbulula fulfilling the the Secretary General role of the ANC, and public services is vacant. So there's a couple of things that need to happen. My wish, obviously, is that the Department of Water and Sanitation of Senzo Mchunu stays. There's been such good change in the Department of Water and Sanitation, and we need a bit more stability there.
Let's see what you have to say as you make your predictions on a possible cabinet reshuffle at SONA tomorrow. Right, what do you have to say? We got Claire Feldman says Sisulu's out. Now, logic would dictate that Minister Lindiwe Sisulu is on her way out. We've seen a lot play out in the media, this battle between herself and the president, although she'd probably tell you that there isn't a battle. But logic dictates that Minister Sisulu goes. Here's my prediction. I think Parks Tau gets the position, but then I would not discount Minister Sisulu staying. Stranger things have happened. But my money, if I had to put it on her going, I put it on her going. I think she's gone. Right, Claire Feldman says Gordhan is gone. I'm not sure about that. Julius? I mean, I think there are a lot of people that would want Minister Gordhan gone, but he's a close ally of the president's, isn't he?
No, he is. He is, absolutely. And I think he's done a lot of good work in the past in government as well. One cannot take that from him, if you see the work in SARS and so on that he's done. But if you look at the public enterprises, if you look at Eskom, if you look at what the Minister of Energy has been saying, Gwedi Mantashe, he's been contradicting what the president's been saying. He's been stuck on fossil fuels. Do you think he's out? Because Alex
Elshove says, I hope Gwedi is out. Do you think he's out? I'm not so sure.
Well, I hope so.
Really?
I hope so. It's interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned that. I think there's a lot to lose if he vacates that position for the ANC elitists. I think there's definitely some benefit in the background that none of us see. But he's been contradicting the president in the energy change that we need to see in South Africa, which makes it a bit of a threat. And the one thing that people don't necessarily know is procurement, for instance, in Eskom is going through the Department of Energy. Now, if you think about it, Pravin Gordhan oversees public enterprises, yet Eskom, a public enterprise, does not necessarily have control over procurement. So how do you run a business if that happens somewhere else?
Yeah.
And does it happen, I suppose, with
all right,
integrity?
so you're holding
else?
thumbs that Minister Mantashe is out. I think he's been put in such a strong position in Nasrec that he's got some clout. But Alex Elshove's with you. I hope Gwede is out. Claire Feldman says the general. She hopes that the general's out. I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see this clean sweep. I think we might see 2 or 3 different appointments, 2 people out, but not a huge reshuffle. I'm not sure that President Ramaphosa is known for stuff like that in the first place. Melissa Whitehorn says the good guys will be gone. Brendan Slade says, fingers crossed, Gwede. I was just about to ask you, Brendan, if that was on your wish list, that Minister Mantashe would be out.
On my wish list, absolutely. Reality, no. As Julius said, is too big of an ANC or political ally. So it would cause a lot of damage to Cyril Ramaphosa if he gets rid of Gwede at this stage. Although we would love to see Gwede walk out, and gonna happen.
Lyndon van der Leitgarten says Brian Molefe for Eskom CEO. I think he's cracking a joke. I'm assuming he is. Hilda Mayers says Sisulu hopefully there. Melissa Whitehorn says the good guys will be gone. Let's see. Dlamini will be out, says Lynette Dawkin. Not so sure about that. Plays her cards right. Who else have we got here? Lynette also hopes the general is out. I think the whole parliament... Yeah? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that we're not touching on police. I think that's really a hot one. We're not necessarily sure if there will be a move there. But my goodness,
it would be a surprise move.
Just getting offended. Yeah, no. But I think if he had to vacate that position, a lot of folk would be exposed.
Yeah. Gerard Liebenberg says, I think the whole of Parliament should just resign and get the hell out of there. Who else have we got? I'm looking for some predictions. Dorina says, first I'd like to hear the report on the promises made previously. That's what everyone wants to hear. What did you deliver on the last set of promises you made a year ago? And can we go back a couple of years? Craig Blichnote is in London, says, hi all. Hi, Tom London. Evening all. Sorry I'm late. It's okay, Craig, as long as you join us. Debbie Stephenson says, Dlamini Zuma has to be removed. COVID, 500 billion disappeared during her control. How quickly we forget, eh? Ali Gule says, Tom, it doesn't matter who goes or who stays because Parliament has a history of keeping a lot of deadwood. Some cabinet ministers are kept based on royalty basis more than competencies and performance. Here. Out, says Keith Sorensen, Angie Mochecha, in Professor Jonathan Jansen. Really? Only 18, I think that's a wish perhaps. Only 18% of grade 4 learners in 2022 can read to understand. Brian Blight says we do not need a state of disaster. And I want to pick up on this because the media hasn't really been talking about a state of disaster the last week or so. I mean, there was mention of it 2 weeks ago. What we need is a state of disaster. People say, yeah, we agree that we need a state of disaster. Nothing. But is it possible that tomorrow night, bang, the thunderclap is a national state of disaster? What do you think, Rachel Fisher, down in Cape Town?
Tom, you got to repeat that question. I was speaking to one of the
no problem. Do you think that there's a possibility a national state of disaster could be announced at SONA?
I hope not, because one of the points that was pointed out by our favorite advocate Stefan, is that when you consider a state of disaster, it means that all your other options are probably off the table. You need to bring in additional support and resources in order to address what's going on, because there are no options. If we look at COVID, we radically had to pivot on our health systems. Getting vaccines, keeping people safe. That's why the military came in and involved the SANDF. We do have the resources to fix this issue. We do have the solutions. So why aren't we spending our time and our energy and actually utilize those resources and not go and base it on something else?
Well,
because what else are they going to do to fix it instead of actually using the solutions we're all recommending?
Yeah, I think a state of disaster would relax a lot of the regulations and rules. Brian Blight says we don't need a state of disaster. The earthquake in Turkey and Syria is a disaster, not Eskom's inability to keep the lights on. That's not a state of disaster. Julius, your prediction on a possible state of disaster announcement tomorrow?
Yeah, look, I think, as you mentioned, the president and the government is very, very desperate. They need the funds. Whether what they want to use it for, we don't know. But we've seen under the Kokta minister that it can go to different intentions if she's the oversight body. But what I can say is that we are ready for that, and I think we will stop it. We will do everything in our power to stop it. I think, as Rachel's mentioned earlier, the state of disaster is you can almost compare it with the car power ships. It's an emergency for 20 years. It's been a disaster for almost 20 years or not, if not more. So why try and declare it now? Especially, and I just want to throw it out there, within 2-3 years ago, this new act came into place where political parties need to show where they get their funds from. Yeah. And with the open books, it's been quite difficult to get funds. Now, with an election year coming up next year, you're desperate in getting funds if you can't get it the old way. So I think we have to keep our guard up. I know people are desperate for electricity, but we must ensure that if money is used, it's done for the right purposes and that people get the benefit out of that. But I'm looking forward to getting to the conversation what we want to hear tomorrow night.
I go to Alex Alzov's question. The question I think we need to ask is, does Mr. Ramaphosa to have the guts to make some significant changes to the benefit of the country? Steve says, yes, where are the 1 million houses in Alex? Where are all the iPads for school kids? A lot of negativity around this. I mean, it's not inconceivable that a state of disaster could be announced and then Minister Nkosi Dlamini Zuma gets to head the disaster council. But who knows? Okay, let's move on to what Julius wants to chat about, and that's what he would like to see and what Alto would like to see announced at SONA. What's on your wish list? What would you like, Julius Kleinhans?
Yeah, I think this is a very long list. But firstly, we want to see the president being actually truthful and open and, being vulnerable, because the ANC and the government cannot fix this problem. It needs civil society and business to come on board. We want to see the relaxation of policies. We want to see policy certainty so that the world can look at South Africa as potential investment space. And we want to see that government's going to play a regulatory role instead of trying to be the fixers. We want to see private sector and these kind of engagements with public-private partnerships so that we can start fixing South Africa, so that you don't create salaries, but jobs. We need to see not more money being focused on social grants, but actually social grant recipients being empowered and having access to actually be productive citizens and grow and contribute and have meaningful, purposeful lives that can stimulate the economy. That's the inspiration we want to see. We don't want to hear about plans. Everyone wants to hear about plans. We've seen so many plans. Some of them are old, some of them are new. The execution sucks by this government. I'm going to put it bluntly like that. We need proper people in the public service who are competent to do their jobs. And this is where the president needs to be bold and also get the unions on board, because the unions won't have membership fees or members in the near future if we're going down this route as we are. So it needs to be a collective. You cannot just protect the members' interest. We need to see places like Eskom becoming financially viable. You cannot carry the public wage bill any longer. We don't want to see any more bonuses. We don't want to see any increases. In fact, we want to see decreases. We want to see tax relief. We want to see tax incentives. We want to see the ability for you and I to become the solution, and not government trying to be the solution because they've failed for more than 2 decades now. A lot of these kind of things. I want to hear the state capture culprits are called terrorists. I want to hear where corruption is mentioned as treason. And I want to see the president putting special state capture corruption courts together so that we can see these people being put in jail and an example be made of them. Then the whole world will see that South Africa is serious and that we can become the country and unlock the potential that we need. As you all know we have.
As you watch this program, what would you like to see come out of the State of Nation address? If you could make one announcement as president, what would it be? What big change would you make? Pop it in the comment section down below the video. I just want to see if Rachel Fisher's on board. I think she did say that she was about to leave. Let's ask her before she does. What's on your wish list, Rachel Fisher, for SONA? What would you like to see come out of the State of the Nation address?
Yes, Tom. Very importantly,
all right, I'm going to read that out. Yes?
Yes, so it says improve protection for whistleblowers. And it leads to your question you never got to ask with me, vote on cabinet, but Julia said, Nandiwe Sisulu is somebody I would think. A matter we raised in today's event is that South African Tourism Board are launching an investigation as to who leaked the information of the Hotspurs deal. They say that those on the board had a fiduciary responsibility to keep that information confidential. Had they not disclosed it, the public would have known. So how can we support people to whistleblow, but then they are reprimanded, they have severe consequences?
That's a lovely wish.
I see, Brendan, you're also having a reaction, so I don't know if that's something that you maybe find a concern with in terms of whistleblowers.
I think we're just battling to hear you with the background news noise, Rachel.
Sorry, yes,
but spot on. Just to add what Rachel said, we see that the government is launching these investigations to find out who the whistleblowers are, the very people who stopped the R1 billion deal, instead of focusing on the very people who tried to manipulate this deal and investigating them and see who wanted to siphon off the money. But the list goes on. We see so many people not having access to jobs, who are desperate to add value to the country, and also if you look at education, oh wow, future generations, this is probably the biggest disservice to them. If you look how we're dropping the standard all the time and not really upping the game, why in 2023 do we have to see marginalized communities and their children not having access to proper schooling and proper education that will be the pivot they need to change in the future, to change the legacy and trajectory of their family and their children's children? It is actually sickening to even have this conversation at this day and age.
I'm not sure whether I asked you, Brendan, what you'd like to see come out of SONA. I think we haven't got you yet.
Yeah, obviously we would like to see some concrete action coming into the energy sphere. But most importantly, we can come with a lot of plans. We need this and that person in that position. We need this and that task team to do this and that. What we need to come from SONA is we need leadership from government. Because if we have leadership, people will flock to help out. People will, stand in queues asking, how can I do my part? We want a leader that instills, or leadership that instills confidence. We want leadership that leads the country. That is my number one wish.
Always fascinated by this word leadership and the concept of leadership. And I love throwing this question about when this type of topic pops up. What is great leadership? I'm going to ask you, and I pop it on to Julius as well, and also to you on the other side. Pop it in the comment section down below the video. What do you think great leadership is, Brendan?
It's putting, in a South African context, putting your self-interest aside, recognizing that you are in a leadership position because somebody put you there, because people believe that you can perform, that you can do something about whatever needs to be done. So good leadership is putting yourself completely aside, doing what you are supposed to do for a good that is greater than you yourself, doing something, above and beyond who you are as an individual.
Julius, how would you define great leadership?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Great leadership is certainly someone who, it's someone who fulfills that. It's someone with a strong moral compass, who are courageous but humble enough to see the potential in others and looking at their character and building that and enabling them to become the solution and to bring out the best in them. And I think, for a president, that leadership it's quite a big task. You need to look at a country, you need to bring out the best in that country and unlock its potential. So what you have to do is you need to surround yourself by other great leaders, and you need to ensure that they complement one another to make the big change that you need. And I think that is the thing. You need to be truthful and also have be open about your insecurities. When you are wrong, you apologize, and be open for other people to criticize, but also to become part of the solution.
I asked the question and put it to you on the other side of the screen a little earlier on what's your wish list for SONA. Ali Goulet says, my wish list is do away with SONA. It's a waste of taxpayers' money since it's just a PR stunt. Promises and promises. Nothing happens after that. Marco Benias says, how, after all these commissions into corruption and highlighting PPOE fraud, etc., are they still brazen enough to sponsor international soccer teams? Claire Feldman would like to see electoral reform. Debbie Stephenson talks about education. Education upgrades in the poorer areas. The basic starting block for meaningful employment later in life is a good education. This often gets missed, hey, Julius, in the conversations about electricity and crime and stuff. But we've got a whole generation of kids that need to be taught properly in our schools.
Absolutely. And, these kids are the future. And I think it's important that we tap into that. South Africa, people say South Africans are very resilient, but we are also very innovative. And, we are, it's sad how the politicians have played their specific narratives to persuade people that we're something that we're not. We've got so much more in common that we know. And I think if we had to stimulate these kind of open thinking and teach people how to actually think and contribute. If you look at this day and age, people are being paid for their knowledge and the way they think. It's not the industrial age necessarily, just on how hard you work. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to focus on bringing out the best in individuals, and we all differ. We all have our specific passions and areas that we can contribute to civil society and be good humans. And I think that's where we need to start looking. So it's such a crime in this country that our kids aren't getting the best education they can. A very well established businessman in this country recently said that if you look at schools and the unions that's involved in schools, it's almost become a vehicle to employ teachers and keep them there at the expense of good education to the kids. And I'm generalizing now because there's fantastic teachers out there and really good schools. But there's also very poor teachers that doesn't know anything about it, and they're not there for the kids. They're there for a paycheck. And unfortunately, they're being kept there. And I think that's the story that you can see throughout the whole country in municipalities and government.
Debbie Stephenson agrees with Claire Feldman. Direct elections essential for accountability and that we elect the president. That's what she would like to see change. Alex Helzov says priority must be safety and security. Picking up on a theme tonight. I mean, when I asked which ministers you'd like to see out or who you'd think would be reshuffled, the general was one of the most mentioned names. Priority, safety and security, says Alex Helzov. Marco Manias says, I'd like to see accountable deadlines, commitments with consequences for not achieving. Claire Feldman says the entire government structure should change from being political to one that serves and respects the public. Brendan Slade talks about good leadership here is also to lead from the trenches and not the ivory tower. Alex says ministers should resign if they're not able to achieve. It would be lovely to see that. Wouldn't it be nice just once in this country's history, just once, one minister go on television and say, I'm very sorry, I underperformed, I hang my head in shame and I leave, I'm going home without my pension. That will never happen. Right. Jeff Scott would like to see all the perpetrators of cable theft, all the infrastructure theft, etc., being treated as treasonous as well, with extremely harsh consequences, punishment being applied by a special court timelessly. Vut Zarko says, in simple words, leadership is about taking risks and challenging the status quo. We'll take one or two more. Debbie, last one. A great leader needs the ability to assess the needs and ability to delegate responsibility to competent leaders. She or he has the ultimate overview and control. Some lovely comments coming in. Thank you very much. Outside of what to expect at SONA, Julius Kleinhaus, what would Outer like to see?
Yeah, just to pop in one last thing, a good leader has great vision and the credibility to inspire. So, I think a lot of the things that we would like to see tomorrow at SONA is what we've already said. But I think the most important thing is that we see a president that is truthful, that speaks to the people about what's wrong and not trying to paint a different picture. And I think, it can be nice it will be great if the president said, listen, we don't know how to fix these problems, and that they're not necessarily just open to get suggestions, but we need you who can fix it out there to come and help us, and we will give you the space to do that without having too much red tape and stuff. I think we need to bring in about a lot of relief. What is exciting though, and I must say this, the state of the nation to me at the moment, the way I'm seeing it from a social innovation point of view and in my role with the Community Action Network and all this, is, yes, there's a lot of negative things, but these things we've known for a long time. It's just really hit almost a rock bottom. How the nice state of the nation for me is how communities are waking up. People are starting to say, not anymore on my watch. And this is what we need in South Africa. We need you and I people who don't look like you and I, people who come from marginalized communities, people who stay in the most exquisite houses in this country, to start taking hand and using our privilege to give those marginalized communities access to make a difference. If we can start working together and getting better organized as civil society and not just watch this political games being played from a distance anymore, we will be a force to reckon with. Those very folk that we have voted into power will have to account to us, because currently that's not the case. So I want to say, and this is sensitive and tender, but unfortunately we've come to this day because we as civil society haven't played a bigger role. So hopefully that'll change for the future and forever. But we need to bridge that gap. And it's you and I that's listening to this and that's watching us that can drive that change.
Brendan Slade, outside of SONA, what would you like to see happen?
I would like to see, as Julius pointed out, communities coming together. We would obviously like to see, some form of hope, some form of inspiration, which isn't an empty promise. We would also like to see that I don't want to go into the notion of plans, but at least a plan that we can buy into, at least a plan that can show, listen, South Africa, we've got money for this, we will utilize it for this crisis. What we also want to see is acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Government stepping back, eating humble pie and apologizing to South Africa, saying, sorry, this mess we are currently in, this is because of the ANC government. We would love to see that. And once we get past the stage of acknowledgement, then we can move forward into the phase of, okay, wrongs have been done, now what? Let's now come together as a country. Let's buy a competent government with the appropriate leadership traits, and then we can move forward. Hopefully that's something we will see.
Julius Kleinans, we'll end with you tonight. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's very important to look at small victories. They're talking about open rail network, for instance, where private industry want to get involved and fix up our railways with Transnet. That can be a significant push in the right direction and economic stimulation of exports and imports. I think, and Brendan is also working on a project like that, is to how can we, as civil society, start becoming part of the solution on municipalities by generating electricity on our rooftops, and municipalities actually procuring that from us. How can we use that opportunity even to stimulate economic growth in our marginalized or poor communities? How can poor communities become mini power producers and we procure electricity from them, and enabling them to have access? I think there's, in all this chaos and problems, so much potential, and I hope to see that is unlocked and that we can start to see real change, but not from the top to the bottom, actually from the bottom to the top.
From your lips to God's ears, Julius Kleinans. Julius Kleinans, Executive of Social Innovation at OUTA, joined us tonight. He joined Rachel Fisher, who is the Parliamentary Engagement and Research Manager, and Brendan Slade, OUTA's Legal Project Manager on the legal team. And if I was the president, I would love to be president because I like those cars and the bodyguards. I'm just the wrong guy to be president. But if I was president, right, I would stand up there and I would say, my fellow South Africans, we messed up. And we're going to have to fix it. And I'm going to tell you how we're going to fix it. But before we do, I need to tell you something, that we can only fix this together. So, come on, people now. Smile on your brother, everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. And let's get down to business. That's how I do it. But that's why I'm not the president. Okay, A good 7 days to you is what I wish you. Full of health, happiness, and a bit of money. And I hope you come and join us next Wednesday at 7 p.m. for another Outer Hour. Thank you to Julius, thank you to Rachel and Brendan for this evening. And most of all, thank you to you, as well as the moderator, Samantha van Nispen, in the YouTube feed. Thank you for joining us via YouTube, where you were in the room with Sam. And if you're in Facebook, you're in the room with Masechla. Thank you for joining us. See you next week. And if you press play on this broadcast post live, thank you for hitting that play button and watching the Outer Hour. I'm Tom London. Until next time, I miss you already.
Our fight to eradicate corruption, maladministration, unethical leaders, and the abuse of taxpayers' money by those in power continues. It's fresh, it's fearless, and focused. The Outer Hour, where your voice matters.